I'm Anthony Wright, and I'm your host today on The Living Conversation with my co-host.
Adam Deeps, welcome.
And our guest today is Nick Egan. And Nick, I'm curious about, first of all, what's up for your clients, but also can you relate a little bit about what your first exposure was to philosophy, like Adam was talking about before the break?
Well, philosophy for me, I started quite young. I have always been interested in questions of the mind and of spirit, even from a
Hmm.
very young age. So I used to wake up, I didn't grow up in a particularly religious household, but I used to wake up and watch like televangelists and stuff on Sundays. This was back when there were only five channels on TV.
Bishop
Um,
Sheen.
yeah, yeah. And so I always had a curious mind about what I considered, even at that time, kind of the big questions. And I started training in martial arts pretty intensely,
Oh,
but I always had an idea that I was interested in the cultivation side. So I started studying in some, Taoist tradition, like energy movement type of cultivation systems, and then some Western intuitive traditions. And then at the same time,
hmm.
it was really Zen that became a more serious practice for me. And then from there, that's been it. So it really has been since I was about 16 in a more formalized study. Before that, I was just reading every book I could get my hands on, from crystals to Necronomicon to the, Christian literature, whatever,
Right. And
anything.
I'm curious to know the name of the Roshi you were speaking about earlier.
So that was Jakusha Kwong Roshi in Sonoma County.
Oh, in
Yeah.
Sonoma County, Chikushaquan.
Yeah. Kwong. Yeah.
Okay.
He is still alive, but believe his son is there at Sonoma Mountain Zen Center.
Oh, Sonoma Mountain Zen Center. Okay.
Hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had studied with Katagiri Roshi in
Hmm.
the Minnesota Zen Center, and he had
Hmm.
was a co-founder of San Francisco Zen Center with Suzuki Roshi. So, Nick, I'm just curious, what's up for your clients these days? What seems to be a theme that is presenting itself?
The theme, it's always, I mean, it depends on what they're working on. So everybody has their own unique challenges. And I think whatever the theme is that's presenting to people, the way I tend to work is I work from whatever the surface level is and then go draw down into more of the mindset work. So I don't usually start with the mindset work. I start with how whatever they identify as a gap. So like
Oh, I see.
if they are a small business owner, then it's like, oh man, I feel like I'm working constantly and I never can get out of, the
Uh,
weeds. Or maybe they're an executive and it's like, yeah, I'm trying to delegate to my team, but they're just not getting it. I'm really frustrated. Whatever it is. And then we sort of draw on that thread all the way down through into whatever the mindset is that's
okay.
creating that effect is how I tend to work. So it's hard to say that there's one particular theme, but certainly AI is an interesting um, current theme right now.
And is that seeming to have some um, shift of people's disposition?
I mean, AI is both, I think it depends on where you are and what you're doing
Right,
and how far
right.
out you're looking. So I think for many people, AI is either a threat or something an opportunity currently.
Yep.
Um, and I think that people are wondering how best to implement it and what's the learning curve there and what's possible with it. And then some people are worried, like, well, it does my job. Like if I'm a copywriter or something, it does my job quite well. Or even a coach, right? I was just talking about this. I have a group of coaches, like kind of a mastermind that I meet with, and one guy has Tony Robbins. I guess you can pay $100 a month or whatever and get the AI version of Tony Robbins that's
Oh
audio. And
boy.
so you can ask it questions and all that. And he said it's great. It's exactly like how Tony Robbins would be. And it's like, well,
Uh-huh.
that's, one of the top coaches in the world. And so there is that component, but he was also saying like people are still looking for the human connection. And so it probably will wipe out some form of the coaching industry, but maybe not the top element of it. But maybe it will eventually. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Are you using the tool or is the tool using you?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, if it's free, then you are the product, right?
Ah, my gosh. So, your thoughts, Adam?
Yeah, I actually just pitched a piece for one publication about, I was really happy how it turned out about that we just need to use the middle way for technology again. We people are phobic about, like Nick said, there's on one hand they're phobic about AI, it's going to ruin everything. On the other hand, they think
Really?
it's going to solve everything.
Mhm.
And to me, it's just another example of using the middle way. It's like you don't need to completely dismiss it. You don't need to completely embrace it in everything you do. We've been through this a million times as human beings. There's been technology since the wheel and fire and whatnot, and we deal with it. We deal with it. Society completely transforms, and humanity, from a Confucian perspective, humanity has the principle in the human being. So we are like little pieces of Tao that just keep massaging and working, and whatever comes out, we harmonize it. We're meant to harmonize it. We're meant to be beings of harmony in our relationships, in our life. So if we're doing our job, so to speak, in a Confucian perspective, if we're fulfilling our heavenly mandate, fulfilling our heaven's destiny, then we're harmonizing things, including harmonizing AI. So in the Buddhist perspective, I would say middle way, not too much AI, not too little, right? And we've done this before with radio, we've done this with TV, we've done this with the internet, we did this a million times. So I don't think there's a reason to be panicked about it. It is very transformative. I mean, I think already had a hand in a lot of major changes, but
Yeah.
humanity finds a way.
Well, my question is, does AI have Buddha nature?
That's like a koan right there.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Any thoughts, Nick?
that it's a so. I mean, from you could take that from like a Zen perspective, and I
Right.
think there's an argument to be made that anything that you are experiencing is a reflection of your own Buddha nature. So,
Yeah,
like by
that's right.
definition, the entire universe has Buddha nature. From that would be like a mind only, like a Chitta mantra kind of philosophical perspective. But it's an interesting. I've actually considered writing either a little thesis on this or a paper or something like that.
Oh, really?
If we're taking just like a conventional perspective, conventional philosophical view from a Buddhist perspective, inanimate objects, not on an ultimate level, how I was just describing it to, but like on a relative level, it's not possible for them to have consciousness, right? So you can't, it's like no matter how, like a rock will never attain consciousness. Rock could be considered like this is where it gets a little bit
Hmm.
confusing with Buddhism. From Buddhism on the ultimate state level, everything is a reflection of consciousness. So the
Yes.
substrate of the universe is itself consciousness and
Yep.
energy. But that's talking about like the fundamentals, not like the thoughts of a rock. So a rock can never have thoughts from a Buddhist perspective. Same goes for like AI. Like it would be impossible for, at least from my understanding, I would love to hear both of your perspective on this. It would be impossible for an inanimate AI to ever become, so-called AGI, like artificial general intelligence. Like it's actually not intelligent. It doesn't, not in the way that I would define it as sentient. So like could AI ever become sentient? From a Buddhist perspective, I would have to say no.
Yeah, I,
What are
I
your
guess
thoughts?
I get a sense that a lot of folks are projecting their expectations upon it.
Mhm.
And your thoughts, Adam?
Well, one thing is there has to be an element, I think, of will. And AI doesn't have a will. We have to put the will in. So wh- what in its nature, so to speak, would drive it to become sentient? Why would it care? It's
Mhm.
it's, it's inanimate. It wouldn't have no concept of why this is important to be sentient. It's just
Mhm.
existing like a rock, like Nick's saying. Doctor Who once told a story about this, similar, but even maybe from a Buddhist perspective, Nick, you would be able to speak to this, like a high, step up from a rock, right? Or you have living beings, like for example, a tree, right? So Doctor Wu would tell a story of how someone would go into the redwood forest and say, "Oh, this tree really speaks to me, and it gave me these warm feelings, and I gave them back, and this kind of thing." And Doctor Wu's take was, "Well, that's nice, but that's just your, to paraphrase, that's your projection. The tree
Mhm.
didn't actually do any of that. That was your projection." So on one hand, the two thoughts that come to me right now is that on one hand, I don't see AI having any kind of will. So that would be something that it would have to just generate. I will say one more thing though. The human mind cannot grasp exponentiality. Like it's just beyond us.
Mhm.
Say that
And
again.
AI, the our human minds cannot grasp exponentiality. And
Exponentiality.
yes,
Okay.
and AI is growing exponentially. Like
Mhm.
it's it's unfathomable to us how much it's processing and doing and learning, so to speak, learning. So on one hand, the sky may be the limit. Maybe somehow, some way, some unfathomable thing happens and AI decides it wants to try and become sentient. That's like very sci-fi, right? But we can't grasp that. It's just beyond our comprehension. But in its nature, it's ones and zeros, so to speak, right? Or I'm not a computer engineer, but in its nature, it's inanimate. Its nature, it has no will. Its nature, it has no path or desire or passions or wanting to seek growth. I think all living things do have a path, do have a desire, do want to seek growth in whatever way they is right for them. But I don't see that with inanimate objects, like Nick's saying. So yeah, that's basically that. That on the one hand, there's that, right? On the one hand, there's that, and on the other hand, we just can't. Maybe we can't grasp it fully. And
Yeah,
on the
like
other
maybe
hand, we're
it's
also
too.
projecting.
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting, like the tree thing sort of complicates it in a way. From a traditional Buddhist perspective, and we're talking in the relative, not in the ultimate. From a relative perspective, a moment of consciousness, like even the name of what we would call like your spirit or your consciousness, the thing that is pre and post death, post pre-birth and post-death is considered, it's called semgyu, meaning like your mind stream, your stream of consciousness.
Speak that
And it's
word
like, well,
again,
what's
please.
the what
Called what?
semgyu? Like your
Semut.
gyu meaning like a flow, like a
Okay.
continuum. Means
Semut.
continuum of mind. Yeah.
Okay.
And so like what is the previous point of origin of consciousness? It's a previous moment of consciousness. So the Dalai Lama talks about this a lot. Like the nature, like what is the cause of my consciousness right now is a previous moment of consciousness going back through infinite time, right?
Oh.
And so it's not like you can create consciousness from a
Mm, mm,
non-conscious thing.
mm, mm.
Now, so that's a philosophical perspective. There is some exceptions to this, Adam, especially I'm thinking of like the tree. Like in Buddhist understanding, you actually like trees do have a spirit if they are like inhabited by these nature spirits, right? So a tree, the way we think of a tree is like this inhabiting, it's almost like a house for a nature spirit. Going back to,
Mhm.
and the same thing in like the Greek times, right? The Greeks talked about the nymphs, they talked about like the forest spirits and all of that. There's lots of different formulations of what counts as like a nature spirit, but there were pre-existing spirits that then inhabit these inanimate objects, which is a different thing. And I think
Yep.
people get a little wonky about that.
Yep.
So
Yeah, and the
maybe, I
tree.
mean, to your point, Adam, like maybe it's possible like a a non-embodied spirit could like embody AI. Like that would be work from a Buddhist philosophical perspective. That'd be some wild stuff.
Well,
So we have to take a
and
short break.
okay, good, good.
I'm Anthony Wright, and I'm your co-host with.
Adam Beats.
And how can people contact you, Nick, who is our guest?
I am Nick Egan. You can reach out to me at nickeganphd.com or on LinkedIn is great too. You can find me there, or you can go to shiftleadership.group for leadership and
And your
development.
last name is Egan.
Correct.
Okay, and Adam.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone for joining us on this crossover episode of the Way Between podcast. And you can find me at the Way. I always get this wrong, but you can search me up at the Way Between on Substack. All my links are on there, is why I always point people there. It's free. And you can also reach out to me at Gmail, deetsadam@gmail.com, DIETZ.
Great. And I'm Anthony Wright, and my website is theonaut.com, and you can, there's a place there for comments. So we're going to take a short break and be right back. So stay tuned.